The average person has at least one relationship in their life that's just very off and on. You break up, then you get back together, then you break up again, and on and on and on. This video is for those of you who are in one or are trying to process a past such relationship, because a paper from 2025 found clear links between what's called relationship cycling and serious stress-related issues. As it turns out, these off and on relationships might be really bad for you, not just in terms of your mental health, but even your physical health. I'm going to tell you all about it today, as well as what you can do with this information if you're currently in the thick of it. So previous research on the topic of relationship cycling showed that people in these types of relationships tend to report lower satisfaction in the relationship, as well as more negative behaviors like toxic conflict and aggression. But the current researchers of the study came up with a new model to explain this. They believe that chronic tension depletes partners' emotional resources, so they can't resolve new conflicts as effectively. When they get back together, those unresolved issues from their past breakup eventually resurface, and they don't have the capacity to deal with those unresolved issues. And the cycle just goes on, where their emotional resources just continue to get depleted. Basically, repeated relationship cycles act as stressors, which damage a person's well-being. So this paper consisted of 4 different studies. One found that those in cyclical relationships had higher amounts of psychological symptoms like anxiety, depression, irritability, and loneliness than those in stable relationships. And those with a higher number of breakups also had more physical symptoms like frequent headaches, stomach issues, and general illness. The second study found that those in cyclical relationships had higher levels of both psychological and physical symptoms, as well as relational stress, which are issues deriving from the relationship itself. The data suggested an indirect effect where relationship cycling leads to relational stress, which leads to the psychological and physical symptoms. The third study showed that among a sample of people who were all in cyclical relationships, a higher number of breakups was associated with higher amounts of relational stress. And the fourth study showed that problematic interaction patterns, specifically ineffective conflict resolution and aggressive communication, interacted with the number of breakups to predict higher relational stress. Surprisingly, stress was highest for those with the fewest amount of breakups. And the researchers explained how this is due to probably a ceiling effect, where if you had like a long history of getting back together and breaking up with someone, you have so much pre-existing stress that more stress doesn't even really put a dent in it for you anymore. So what do we do with this information? Especially if you're hearing this and you're in an on-again, off-again relationship, you're probably wondering, great, so I guess screw me then? Like, what do I do? I'm going to break it all down after a word from today's sponsor. I've been trying to reduce my exposure to toxins for a few years now. I try to mainly use skincare that comes in a glass bottle. I swapped out my scented candles for LED candles. I've been trying to buy only natural fiber clothing, but I'm also a very sensory person. I love making my home more beautiful using all 5 senses, which is why I love using Azuna's products to keep my home smelling fresh. Azuna is a plant-powered home wellness brand that helps eliminate odors naturally using pure Australian tea tree oil. So whereas traditional air fresheners just kind of mask unpleasant scents, Azuna neutralizes them straight at the source. It's very convenient because they have a refillable pod system, so you get continuous odor control for up to 90 days, and it's also eco-friendly. Or you can also use their spray if you want just like an instant boost of freshness. It was a lifesaver a few days ago when one of our cats had a little accident in the litter room. Just make sure to put it out of pet's reach. So I put mine up on a shelf, and it's been really helpful for neutralizing funky smells. Use the code Psychology with Dr. Anna 30 to get 30% off your order at my link below. That's Psychology with DRANA 30. Thank you so much to Azuna. So back to that study, what do we make of its findings? First of all, it must be mentioned that the study is correlational, so we can't assume causality. It could be, for example, that mental health struggles or other stressors cause the breakups, and that those mental health struggles also show up with like symptoms, whether physical or emotional. But we also have a very large body of research showing the negative effects of stress. And so if these cyclical relationships are highly stressful, which we know they are, it stands to reason that that stress is going to impact people. So there is sort of a causal implication there. Let's assume for a moment that the researchers' causal mechanism is indeed what's going on here, that breakups cause stress, and then you have less emotional energy to deal when problems recur in the relationship, which leads to deleterious serious consequences to both your physical and mental health. I don't know if this is necessarily going to be mind-blowing to someone who's been in an off and on relationship, but I think it's important for people to hear, because if you are in one, it might be the final straw that you need to finally sever that toxic cycle, right? Like, I think most people would acknowledge, yeah, it's stressful to keep breaking up with people and then getting back into relationships with them, but that doesn't really stop them from continuing to do it. Typically, people don't think that getting back together with their ex is going to prolong their suffering. They think it's going to be an end to their suffering. They think, this breakup is making me miserable. I miss this person. I want to be with them. They're not thinking about, okay, but like, have we worked on our issues enough? Are we maybe not a good match? Why did we break up already twice or 3 times or however many times? But in a lot of these situations, the cause of the suffering isn't the fact that you're alone and missing this person. It's kind of natural to grieve a breakup anyway. The thing that's going to prolong your suffering in a lot of those situations is the relationship itself, is getting back with that person, or the fact that you haven't made a clean break from that person, so there's a chance they might still wiggle their way into your life. I mean, there's a reason you broke up in the first place, so, you wouldn't have broken up if everything was fine. Now, it's true, sometimes people need time and space apart to work on themselves before getting back together as like improved versions of themselves, but is that actually what you're doing? Have you actually defined what your issues are in the relationship, what each person needs to work on, how they intend to work on that? Like, if they're going to therapy, have they selected a therapist? Have they started going? Are they keeping up with it consistently? When and how do the two of you plan on getting back together? What are your boundaries during that time apart? Are you dating other people, for example? If the goal is actually, okay, let's take time apart and then get back together later, then these things need to be very operationalized. It can't just be like, let's see what happens, because not much is going to happen. You're just going to end up getting back together and the relationship still has the same issues as before. If you're not being very specific and very intentional with it, then you're not taking time apart to work on your issues. You're just waiting to miss each other again, then go right back to the same old issues, except this time with more baggage and less emotional energy to work on it. I think a lot of these relationships are just highly addictive, where the other person's presence can become kind of like your drug of choice that you keep relapsing with. Because a lot of these off and on again relationships tend to be quite high passion, where the reunion with the other person feels almost like an intermittent reinforcement. I've spoken about how intermittent reinforcement is very powerful. It's what keeps people in gambling addictions, for example, because they don't know, am I going to get the reward or not? And that is almost more enticing to our minds. So every time the cycle is strengthened, every time you get back together with that person, the addiction gets strengthened. And every time you're more and more likely to feel that urge to go back to them. One breakup and reunion, sure, maybe the two of you had some issues, you worked them out and you're soulmates. Maybe you're married, maybe you have kids and you don't want to just throw away a good thing. Sure. But more than one breakup, I do have to wonder if you're trapped in a toxic cycle and you don't know how to get out. The key question that this article should make you ask yourself is this relationship worth costing you your health? Because we have empirical evidence suggesting that these relationships predict anxiety, depression, irritability, loneliness, headaches, GI issues, general illness, relational stress, that they're also associated with poor conflict management, communication aggression, lower relationship satisfaction. If nothing ever changes, is it worth putting your mind and body through that? And the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So if your partner has done XYZ in the past and you're wondering, are they going to continue to do XYZ in the future? That's very likely. It's not always the case, but it's a very strong predictor. But another question that I think is worth asking yourself, if maybe you don't even care about your health that much, you just really want this person, is it worth the stability of your future relationships? Is it worth damaging your attachment style, for example? Past relationships can be really damaging to future relationships. I remember a few weeks ago, I was covering this article on like how pivotal friendships are from childhood to determining your adult attachment style. And I just thought that was crazy. It's like, what, your friends when you were literally like 10 years old matter that much for your relationships as an adult? It's true. Every relationship that we stay in impacts us. So if we stay in a relationship that's clearly not working, we're going to have internal takeaways from that relationship that like, people are going to let me down, that I can't trust people. You're going to develop certain like wounds and triggers that you're then going to bring into future relationships that could actually be much healthier for you. Are you choosing to save something that's really clearly not working at the cost of something in your future that could work really well? And the question question that I always think is super important to keep in perspective when we're dealing with relationship issues. Is this the happily ever after that you would want your kids to hear about one day? Regardless of whether or not you have kids or want kids, like imagine for a second that you do have kids in the future. Would you want to tell them, hey, yeah, like mommy and daddy met on Tinder and then daddy reactivated it 2 weeks later and he cheated on me with 6 different people and then we got back together. Yeah, that was fun. 2 years later, I found out he was doing it again and we broke up. But then, I kind of missed him, so we got back together. And then he sent an inappropriate text to his coworker. Like, your kids would be like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like, this sounds horrible. This is not the relationship I want. This is not a fairy tale. Go read me Hansel and Gretel, please. Think about it that way. Think about it in the grand scheme of things. Really like zoom out and think like, what is the story of this relationship? Because if it is a very dramatic, volatile one, are you really sure that that's your happily ever after? I'm so glad that my husband and I have had like a very smooth, uninterrupted relationship for 8 years, almost 8 years, because I would hate to like have that story with like my one person. I would hate to have a story that is so obviously not a happy one. Sometimes a clean slate is better. And if you're looking for a clean slate in your home, don't forget to check out Azuna. Hope you have a nice rest of your week. Take care.
Tell me what you want, what you need. Tell me, tell me, tell me, tell me what you want, what you need. Tell me, tell me, tell me, tell me.